Thanks everybody for coming. I'm Morgan. I work at the School of Human Ecology, and I'll be your moderator for today. Thanks for joining us for the 5th episode of Food in the Wisconsin Idea in our beta season for 2018. So there are 6 units that rotate, taking turns hosting this event at UW-Madison. This month, our host is the Kaufman Lab in the Department of Planning and Landscape Architecture. Our goal with these events is pretty simple. We each month tackle a topic related to food that we think will be relevant to the people of Wisconsin. Most of the time it's UW professor, staff, or group of students working directly with community members across the state, which is what the Wisconsin Idea is all about. So this is our beta season, we're calling it, in 2018, which gives us a chance to learn this Zoom technology, and it also gives us a chance to try out some different things. This sort of off-campus version of our event being one of those kind of new ventures that we're trying. So we're at the Dane County Extension Office today, and before we get started, I'm going to invite Carrie Edgar up, the director of the Dane County office, to say a few words.
More? They're directing me. Sorry. The director of the Dane County Extension Office. First, I just want to say thanks to Greg and our speakers today and Food in the Wisconsin Idea for being willing to try one of these off campus. I'm hoping maybe this is the first of many as a way to try off campus, at least during the summertime or when it works. And we're also excited about the Zoom option and being able to have people join wherever they are. So here at the Dane County Extension Office, we're some of the other county extension offices. We offer a lot of programming in 4-H youth development, community economic development, agriculture and horticulture, and family living financial education programs. So typical to other offices across the state. Anything else, Greg? I left my notes at home. Oh, and I also wanted to just briefly, Greg had asked me to talk about the community food systems. What previously was the community food systems team of UW Extension is now a community food systems program within UW Extension, and that they have agreed to sign on as a sponsor or a partner or collaborator with Food in the Wisconsin Idea, which I'm really excited about. So with that, I'll stop. Thanks again for everybody who could make it here to the Dane County office, and I look forward to our presentation.
Thanks, Gary. So we do have a small-ish studio audience today, and that's partially because there's another Madison Farmers Market meeting going on today, and it's about the Double Dollars program, so we definitely don't want any market managers missing that. But this is going to be recorded. Greg's been recording, and it'll be posted to YouTube in a week or so, so everyone can watch this on their own time. And we're really happy for the people that we do have in the audience today. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you'll be engaged in the conversation. We want to welcome everybody in our Zoom audience too. Thanks so much, especially the ones turning their webcams on. That's new, and it's nice to put a face to the virtual names. So yeah, I think we'll get started. I'm really excited to welcome Professor Alfonso Morales from the Kaufman Lab again at the Department of Planning and Landscape Architecture. So I think, Alfonso, I'll ask you to introduce yourself, the Kaufman Lab, and the guests that you brought with us, both in person and virtually.
Sure thing. Thank you very much, Morgan. I'm really appreciative of Carrie and folks here at Extension. Being a new Extension faculty person myself, I'm excited about taking the work of campus to here locally, to Dane County, to the state, and to the nation, and even the world as it matters most, and that is the Wisconsin Idea in practice. I've been working with farmers markets and marketplaces and vendors for my entire career, about 25 years. And I've written about the economics of marketplaces, marketplace organization, and community development activities in marketplaces, and it's been a great opportunity to engage community members in discovering their goals and helping them advance those goals. So let me stop and again thank Carrie and UW Extension, and to also acknowledge the folks in my department who support the Kaufman Lab, which is created in the memory of Jerry Kaufman, food systems planning guru and initiator of food systems work in urban planning. And the USDA, who have funded the work that you're going to hear about through a Hatch grant and through an AFRI grant. And of course, market managers around the country, while in 7 states, who assisted our work. So let me begin. Let me turn now We have two other participants joining me here. Lauren Suerth, I'll ask her to speak about herself in a little bit. And joining us from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin is Dusty Krikau, and I'll ask her to introduce herself. So shall we begin? Dusty, would you like to start us off, please?
Sure. It looks like my video just died. I'm hoping you can still see me.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, good. The host has stopped my video is what I've been told. So, so it might be on the tech side of things. I serve as the director for special events and communication for the Downtown Fond du Lac Partnership. And part of that role includes running the Downtown Fond du Lac Farmers Market. My background, there we go. Now we've got some video. I come to the role with a background in higher education administration. And so my desire to improve our program and make adjustments based on data led me to quickly embrace the system we're going to be talking about today when it was presented to me.
Thank you, Dusty. Now let me hand it over to Lauren.
So I'm currently a PhD candidate at the Planning and Landscape Architecture Department. As a whole, my research studies interaction of people, place, and policy in everyday life, and I'm passionate about building communities through land use and food systems. Within MiFi, I serve multiple different roles, but for the purposes of our discussion today, I'll draw upon my responsibilities in developing the data collection processes and the programs. And then also how I support markets that use them.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very fortunate. Lauren's been a terrific part of this program for her entire career at the UW, and Dusty's worked with us for several years, and we're very fortunate to have them both today. Our objective today is threefold. In brief, we're going to discuss the roles and impacts of citizen science research methods, how citizens can capacitate themselves and develop the goals of their markets. We're going to explain the practice of citizen science, and we're going to demonstrate the operationalization of that theory, of those ideas, into an online portal, which is the metrics and indicators for impact, or MiFi markets.org. So, Morgan, here we go. Let me begin by providing some broad context here, okay? The other USDA work that I've been involved in was as a member of a dozen people on the USDA local food economics experts web team to develop a local food economics toolkit. And in the development of that, we determined that there were several important things that when you're thinking about food systems and you're thinking about marketplaces and you're thinking about relating the work of marketplaces to the food system and understanding the impact of that work, you need to do about 5 different things. You need to ask yourself, who's at the table? And have you got the expertise and partners that you need to determine and advance your objectives? Second, what are the outcomes you're aiming for? What do you expect? Are your goals and purposes clear? That's a process that takes time. Third, what is the scope of your work? Fourth, what is the time frame for your work? Is your work just going to produce a cross-sectional picture, or do you want to make a long-term understanding of your activities? And then what resources have you got in order to enable this? So there's oftentimes conflicting interests here in food systems work, and folks are not always aligned in their interests and expectations, but oftentimes there can be alignment, and I'd like to turn to Dusty right now to give us an example of constraints she's faced and how she's worked them through.
Sure. The major constraint that anybody faces is funding for projects like this. It doesn't come free, nor should it. There's a lot of data analysis involved in all of the work that's happening with MiFi. And in our case, we have a relationship with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, which has helped to secure funding for us and for the data collection processes. But the funding, the resources necessary for this also come in the form of human capital, having people who are able to be at the market and distribute the data collection tools and bring all that data back and enter all that data. So funding and people power is definitely a constraint when implementing something like this, and something that needs to be incorporated into the plan of implementation. And then the vendors don't necessarily care about this data until you explain to them the value of the data. So communicating how this is going to be important for them was something that we took care to do. So regularly communicating with them about how we were using the data and how we were what this data was going to do for us to be able to prove that we were in a good place. Additionally, constraints-wise, we, without this program, would not have been able to run anything remotely like the data analysis that's happening here, despite the fact that Fond du Lac has 3 institutions of higher ed. That doesn't mean that researchers are jumping into our lap and saying, please let us analyze the data from your market. That's just not where interns' minds are. So, so having the supervision of the experts from MiFi was invaluable for us as we figured out how to count data and how to count visitors, and with 7 different entrances, things like that. Having those experts in the field was very helpful. Lauren, I guess I would like to turn over to hear your thoughts on the role of the scientists coming into this program.
Yeah, so when it comes to researching local food systems and farmers markets, scholars also need support from community members and stakeholders to address questions that advance their personal agendas and also academic inquiry as a larger whole. So scholars require significant financial support to do the research that is acceptable for academic standards and communities do not always have the money to support it, especially when it comes to local foods organizations and initiatives such as farmers markets. This means that we cannot gain insights that can come from long-term collaborations, or it's really difficult. So these observations prompted our desire to develop resources that empower scholars and members of the public around scientific and practical data collection strategies. Given our background and interest in farmers markets, we focused on this area of the food system. Our goal was to engage with market managers to understand their unique roles and responsibilities and to develop a toolkit that enables ongoing collaboration. So Alfonso, tell us a little more about these roles.
Yes, thank you very much. And so it is so vitally important, right, that folks understand everybody's busy and they're playing different roles in the food system. A market manager at one moment is raising money, is analyzing data, is working with relationships with their stakeholders. They have a variety of things. And we focused on the role of the market manager. We wanted to help them make their role a little bit easier in terms of data collection and much more effective. We wanted them to be effective participants in their relationships. So while they're trying to balance their interests and their need for data and the needs that they have in other parts of their lives and their interest in becoming credible in their community, we wanted them to be able to communicate those impacts with their funders.
About citizen science first before we proceed. For us, citizen science is a method of doing research that describes projects where scientists and members of the public interact to study communities through systematic processes that produce reliable data on real-world issues or problems. One way to capacitate managers is to provide them with instructions for collecting data that they can easily understand and implement consistently. Doing so brings them benefits of quality data that they can use it to build legitimacy and credibility within their community and to communicate impacts with funders. If Dusty, you could tell us a little bit about your work with data, that would be great.
Sure. Yes, now I will. So the data that we have collected has helped us in a variety of different ways. We have various benefits that come out of it. First of all, on a completely interpersonal level, we have a much greater engagement with our vendors. So every week in the process of collecting sales slips, I engage with every single vendor at my market in that during that collection process, which gives me not only the opportunity to socialize with them, but also to collect feedback from them. So in addition to the quantitative data that we're collecting as part of MiFi, I'm getting a lot more anecdotal data than we used to gather because there was not necessarily a reason to stop by every vending space at the market prior to doing these pieces. We also have a lot more community interaction with the visitor counts and visitor surveys. We've been integrating a lot more volunteer groups into the market. They have very specific tasks, but that also means that during the off times from those activities, they are wandering around the market and seeing it succeed and are vested in making sure that the activities are there that keep the market from being boring. We also do a lot of reporting with the data. So beyond the market collection processes, the data that we gather is analyzed and then presented to the board of directors. Our vendors use it. We present it to the city, and then we also use it to make our grant distribution, our grant reporting processes much easier based on and more accurate than what they had been in the past. It's no longer, we think our market's doing well, we know our market's doing well. The other thing that it's helped us do is verify that similar data for our vendors. We know that based on 3 years of data that when it's raining at our market, people who come to the market spend at the market. So our average spent per person goes up when there is rain because the people that are there to shop. And we can show that with data and back it up. So now we have better attendance because our vendors come even in the rain because they know that they're going to still do well at the market. And that data is backed up with, or that claim is backed up with data. And then I also work with the Wisconsin Farmers Market Association, and I've been able to share this information with other markets to say, here's what we know happens in Fond du Lac. It's probably going to be true in your community, which is 20 minutes or 45 minutes away from mine. So you can see that my role with data is turning us into, each person in our market is becoming a citizen scientist. Excuse me, it's becoming a citizen scientist, and I'm growing in my ability to relate to others in my community. And that's because I'm learning to work with data from a scientific perspective and help them learn to use the data from a scientific perspective. Lauren, can you tell us about your work and how you would describe this role that I'm playing?
Yes, so citizen science is a broad term that people use to describe a range of outreach-oriented partnerships between scientists and members of the public. Today we concentrate on two perspectives on how to do citizen science, engagement and collaboration. So projects either define citizen science as a method for engaging the public or for collaborating with the public. Projects that emphasize engagement typically enlist members of the public in collecting large quantities of data across a range of places and locations over long periods of time. In contrast, projects that emphasize collaboration describe citizen science as a partnership between scientists and publics. Many collaborative projects start at the community level to study real-world issues that have direct and immediate local impacts. The purpose is to align the research process and outcomes with community priorities and values, so the data will be useful in that particular place.
So remind us, Lauren, how do scientists help with this?
In collaborative projects, scientists have a supportive role. They participate in deliberative discussions about the research, design, and process. They provide systematic methodology for collecting and analyzing the data, and they help project leaders generate solutions within the context of their community. So scientists complement the deep local knowledge that members of the public have about the issue within their community by informing or co-managing the project.
And that is exciting. We help work directly with market managers to identify and achieve their goals. We work with them in a reciprocal way, and we develop mutually advantageous goals, and we work as a process. We don't just fly in and fly out. We get to be part of the market and their experience, and that to me is really exciting. So Dusty, can I ask you to tag on to that?
Sure. I think easily it's said that when we find scientists who are willing to work with us and who are willing to listen and engage with us, then the managers can engage those scientists interested in developing tools that we can actually use on the ground.
And that's where I come in, doing citizen science and creating the tools that managers can use to understand their market and the many benefits their market produces. Thank you guys all so much. If Alfonso, you could share some about the metrics and indicators of the project, that would be great.
Sure, that's right. So I've been working with markets since I was a vendor at a market in Chicago for my own dissertation research about 25 years ago, more than 25 years ago. And I recognized intellectually the problem from the market manager perspective is that the scientists had too many demands. We were focused on a moment in time, and we needed big financial resources. And the market manager, from their perspective, our demands were probably too substantial, too big. So I thought to myself, well, how about if we got together and worked collaboratively, as Lauren was just saying, and engage each other and work collaboratively to develop a toolkit that would be mutually advantageous, that would enable managers to achieve their goals and to identify new goals, as Dusty was saying. And so we applied to the U.S., the brief version of the story is we applied to the USDA, got a grant, and hired Lauren and other folks who have been involved in the program over the years, and we worked with markets in 7 states to develop MiFi. So, Lauren?
Sure. So MiFi combines the principles of engagement and collaborative citizen science, but these characteristics emerge at different stages of the project. So when we developed MiFi during the grant period, we engaged 17 markets in the research process. Together, we produced standard data collection protocols and a toolkit that markets and researchers can realistically use for their own purposes. So markets, it's building their own data and knowledge. For researchers, it's building a data set that they cannot otherwise have the capacity to do. Then in our implementation phase, which is now, our work relies upon the collaborative perspective because the toolkit enables managers to develop reliable and valid knowledge on issues that are directly relevant to them and to interpret and report the information to their stakeholders and communities. At this stage, our purpose as scholars is to help markets align unique characteristics of their activities, organizational operations, and community initiatives with MiFi's metrics and data collection processes. When we provide this support, we're also advancing our objectives to collect data that can inform local, state, and federal policy decisions. So by combining these two perspectives of citizen science, MiFi expressly advances scientific knowledge and helps managers achieve their goal. Our work meets the gold standard for citizen science projects.
I would completely agree. MiFi is a resource that has put social science research standards directly in our hands and in the hands of managers around the country, but at the same time, it's respects the unique characteristics of each market. I don't have to collect every indicator that somebody in the West Coast or the East Coast collects. And MiFi can be applied to any market in the US, but the local community relates the MiFi process to their priorities and values to gain knowledge that has a direct and immediate local impact, but can still be related to the other markets.
Yes, we're glad you see it that way. MiFi accomplishes this by providing resources that markets can use to select metrics that correspond with their local conditions and goals, collect data to produce valid and reliable results, and communicate findings through automated custom analysis and reporting. Each market uses MiFi to create their own place-based project, essentially.
That's exactly how I feel about it. I knew that we had a great market walking in, but when I started my role was the same year that MiFi rolled out, and I discovered that there had been no baseline data collected to help tell our story in any way. So MiFi offered us a quick and easy structure for understanding the market's successes as well as how to make improvements on our market. For instance, when I started, our market had just moved from a small self-contained parking lot onto our main street and was now closing a street from cross traffic and through traffic, and I needed to prove consistently that the market was successful and beneficial in this new location. And MiFi helped me do that. We also run 2 markets, so our midweek and our Saturday markets are completely different in vendor makeup and customer makeup and quantity of visitors, and that's reflected in the findings and the reports for both of the markets. They look completely different, and we collect different data at both of them because they are realistically very different, and disparate data points are needed to showcase the benefits and efficiencies of both of them. And the MiFi tool and team is responsive to all of those circumstances and made sure that we could capture the diversity of vendors, products, customers, and benefits. It's been a great fit.
Great. Thanks so much, Dusty. Thanks to all of you guys. If you could kind of sum it all up for us and give a conclusion, that would be great.
Absolutely. So I hope that folks can see how the toolkit, the MiFi toolkit, helps advance their particular goals in their particular communities. It's very important from my perspective, even though I'm an academic and a researcher, it's very important from my perspective to advance community interests and goals. That is why we did the work of this project. That is why we've made it available around the country. And so we hope that we see actually many examples like Dusty's of how market managers are able to report with great confidence and to develop relationships with great confidence to their stakeholders around the country. And then the work that we learn from them, Dusty's stories, for instance, I will be taking to presentations at the USDA and then for the Union of Concerned Scientists in June, twice in June of 2018, and again to USDA in December and September of 2018. So this to me is super exciting. And among the sorts of things I can report are things that Dusty can describe for you again, can sum up again for y'all.
Sure, I can give some very specific examples of how we've used our data so far. Because we have the MiFi data, it's empowering our everyday activities and advancing our goals. So last year, we received a major win and collaborative benefit of this product was shown through city support. So our local municipality was able to look at the numbers and say, yeah, you have too many people there. We need to change some of the barricade structure to make your market safer. And we would not have been able to verify that visitor count data without the structures that had been granted to us from MiFi. We simply wouldn't have had the understanding of how to count the people walking through our market, nor the analysis to show that those numbers were consistently increasing. So the city has thrown their support behind the market because we've been able to show that it's successful and continuing to be supported by the community. It also makes us far more credible. So when I give a statistic about our economic impact in our county and in our greater municipality area, I know that those numbers are accurate, and I can talk to people about how that data was collected and know that that our statistics are verified and understandable, and are statistically accurate, scientifically accurate. The other things that we use it for are things like marketing. So our market opened last week, Saturday, and in collaboration with the local UW Extension County office, we did a countdown to the market showing the statistics. So they shared it, we shared it, and everybody was talking about the different statistics that we had, each day focusing on a different metric of things that we had collected the previous year or the years past to show growth of the market. We also use this data during our annual report, which continues to impress my board, and then also helps to showcase to our downtown business owners the value of having a market on Main Street, which is really important to us since we are working as an economic development entity for the downtown as a whole. And without that data to show that this is good for our businesses, it would be a struggle for us to explain why it makes sense for our downtown entity to run the market. And then finally, vendor recruitment. We can tell vendors exactly how much more per year our vendors are making over the year before. So last year was a 26% increase in vendor sales, and that brought me some new vendors this year. And it's been a continual process of showing vendors that when you come, more customers spend. And so we have consistent increase in vendors, both increase in quantity as well as in vendor product diversity.
Yes, and you can see how integrating scientific measurement standards into your everyday work can make a difference for achieving your goals and advancing your local food systems initiatives.
And that's what this was about. Again, we want to show some appreciation to Greg and Morgan for taking the time to develop this, for Carrie, of course. Dusty, it is a gift that you have shared with us of your time today, and we really appreciate it. Of course, the market managers around the country have been part of this and who use this and use our processes. States from Maine to Virginia to Ohio, the markets we've worked with over the years, I'm endlessly thankful to them. And Lauren it's hard for me to find the words to show the sufficient gratitude that she has had. And I would also be remiss if I didn't mention and was thankful for the Center for Nonprofits and the School of Human Ecology. That's right, Mary Beth Collins, whose work administering MiFi has been very important and supportive of everybody involved. So let's turn it over to questions.
Yeah, I think we're going to open it up to the Zoom audience first for questions, since there's maybe more of them than there are in the room here with us. And I think we have a couple questions already up there in the chat box. So Hannah Wente, what states currently have MiFi, and how long have you been working in those states? What does it cost for a market to sign up for data tools? I think Hannah's still with us. Yeah, there she is.
Okay, so the business of MiFi is that it's a program of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And so it is a fee-for-service program, and the price of it is determined by the university each year. We cannot make money from the service we provide, but we are allowed to charge our expenses. So each year, the university engages in a process to determine that cost. For 2018, it was determined to be $250 per market per year. And so depending upon how many markets join MiFi, the economies of scale will probably reduce the costs. And if the costs are reduced, then the markets get credit for future years of service. So, of course, market organizations can also join MiFi. So if a city, if a food policy council, or if a large city that has many markets wants to become a member of the program, they can do that. And there's a fee that they're charged, which this year is $500 a year. And then each of the markets that are part of it is also charged a fee, which it's $250 as well, right? Anyways, those details are available at the webpage, mifimarkets.org. And of course, that'll be updated regularly. And besides that kind of update, I should say that we will be responsive whenever there's a new metric that becomes important to USDA or NIH or some other organization. We can create new metrics and integrate them into the toolkit so that we can keep up with the changing environment of farmers markets and marketplace activities. Now, what states? So, oh my goodness, Maine, Virginia. So we have worked in Maine, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Ohio, Mississippi, and Wisconsin, right? And right now we have contracts with REAP Food Group here in Madison, to where we're working specifically doing economic contribution and impact analysis in 2 counties, in Milwaukee County and in Marathon County, Wisconsin. And one of our great lab employees, Chloe Green of Los Angeles, California, of Greater Los Angeles, has won a Wisconsin Idea Fellowship to work to do food security work with markets here in Dane County. So she'll be working with folks in this regard, and I'm excited about that.
That was a pretty good answer for that one. Yeah. Yeah, if anybody wants to jump in on their webcam and ask a question, feel free. And otherwise, I think we'll go back up to Claudia had a question, 2 questions. First, will you be sharing your data gathering tools? Second, will you be providing input on the farm bill that threatens the SNAP program, or do you have suggestions for doing so? Anyone can jump in on this.
Do you want to say about either of those?
I'll do the first one.
Sure.
So for sharing our tools, you have to sign up in order to get access to them. That is part of the process of it, mainly because if you just go out and follow the instructions, it kind of misses some of the process that's engaged in the 3 steps that we follow, or that MiFi we've embedded within MiFi, which involves selecting your metrics. So that's where we work with you to kind of discuss your goals and your initiatives, what issues are relevant to your community, and how you can use MiFi to support them. And then those selections, which selecting from over 25 of those metrics then influences what instruments you then use to collect data. Those are consolidated down into 7 to 10, depending on the style of your market. And then the data that you collect through that is then again embedded into our analysis process. So we encourage you to sign up to get access to the instructions.
And it's pretty inexpensive, right? It's pretty inexpensive because that's the way we want it to be. We want it to be accessible to folks. The other part of that question was, the Farm Bill. So yes, on June. In about a month, June 7th, 8th, I'll be in Washington, D.C. at the request of the Union of Concerned Scientists to discuss farmers markets and marketplace activities and MiFi and its contribution in understanding the importance of many Farm Bill activities. So I will be weighing in directly on the subject on the Hill and with congressional staffers, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity. I think that's now, and of course, there are other resources in this regard, folks who will be working on behalf of a robust and inclusive Farm Bill, which I think is very important, and we can try and establish some compilation of resources in that regard. So that's a great question.
Great. Do we have any other questions on Zoom? I saw somebody hop on the webcam briefly. I wasn't sure if that was a question or anyone else. Claudia did. Where do I sign up? And that's mifimarkets.org. Greg posted in the chat box. We can also send that out with the video recording when we send that out. All right. Anybody in the studio audience have any questions? Oh, over there, Carrie. Oh.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to say is one of the interesting things is that MiFi, folks think about farmers markets as summertime activities typically, right? But actually farmers markets operate year-round in many places, and what's a busy season in the Midwest is often a very slow season in parts of the Deep South. And so in parts of the Deep South, there's a lot more activity at parts of the season when in the Midwest, our winter markets, you might say. So we're very responsive to those changes in context, and our tools don't have any problem comprehending those sorts of changes. So let me turn it over to.
Yeah, sounds great. Do I need to walk the mic over to Carrie?
Okay. I just had a quick question about was there a variety of sizes and types of markets, and could you talk about what were the differences in the market and how the tool may work depending on the size and type of market?
Thanks, Carrie.
So we worked with markets of all different sizes to build it. So we had markets that were over 100 vendors, and then we had markets that had like about 8, or sometimes I think we had one as small as 4 vendors. And so we got their feedback on how their market functions at each of those different sizes and scales. And then they also tested those resources to make sure that they function in a similar manner to collect consistent, reliable data in those various different situations. I'd also add that we tested in markets that had volunteer managers, so they had very little institutional support and financial resources to do MiFi. And then we worked with ones that had full-time plus a part-time manager. So we tested it across not only various different sizes of markets, but markets with various different capacities.
And I guess to just add on to that, then in a separate grant, we tested the portal. So MiFi Markets and how it is that market managers interact with the portal. And we iterated through versions of the portal to hopefully make it very user-friendly for market managers. Of course, these things are ongoing and we're improving them. The university is provided us substantial support to continue to make changes.
And so what Alfonso means by the portal, because we didn't really go into that too much, is basically we implement MiFi through an online custom program. So basically we've been building a online system where markets go in, they can select their metrics online. Based off of that selection, they get their data collection materials. Then they enter the data online through a simple batch upload process. But we also have embedded rules into, so we make sure that you are entering right data into the right fields. No numbers in yes, no columns, that kind of thing. And then it automatically analyzes the data for you. And you can run those analyses at any point in time. We mentioned that we have about 25 metrics, but it can analyze into over 250 data points. So you can get some really nuanced information about the data you're collecting. An excellent example of that is market sales. So total market sales is a powerful metric in and of itself, but it's an addition or an aggregate of cash sales, SNAP credit and debit. So you can not only get an understanding of that total number, but also the nuances or the different data points that compose it. And then you can create pretty and analytical reports as well online. So
I think that actually sort of answers Scott's question. If there was any sales data as part of the program, that's what you're speaking to. Yeah. Okay. What's Good provides farmers markets with an e-commerce app, and I wonder if that might be a good partnership opportunity. Yeah, definitely.
So the sales data that we do are total market sales, central terminal sales, because those can be distinct from the vendor sales. And we also collect data. We also analyze it into distinct vendor sales information. And then while it's not directly sales related, we do collect data. We have mechanisms for collecting data on repeat SNAP customers and unique SNAP customers, which is oftentimes a powerful metric if you have any food security type goals with your market.
That particular metric was very helpful to us recently in our conversations with the United Way. They wanted to see, we recently did a presentation for our food access providers, so all of our food pantries locally and all of our people who are working with low-income communities and SNAP users on a regular basis, and that unique SNAP users was a very key indicator that they wanted to know.
Great. I think Deborah has a question. Are you willing to come on via webcam?
Where do I press?
We can hear you. We can hear you just fine.
Oh, you can. Okay. I was wondering, is this the same metrics program that the Farmers Market Coalition is using?
So we have a couple of different answers to that question. So this is a little bit longer story about the development of the portal. The FMC, the Farmers Market Coalition, was the subcontractee for the grant. I was the principal investigator of the USDA Afri grant. And the Farmers Market Metrics program that FMC is using is based on our research. The actual way that they implemented the program is it has differences that I'm not sure I can totally rehearse right now, but there are distinctions in it that I think bear reconsidering. So having said that, yeah, I mean, so they're very, very different programs. Well, they're very different programs. The MiFi is based very fully on a complete collaboration, a very integrated collaboration, I think I could say, between market managers and scientists, and that's an ongoing collaboration because the University of Wisconsin's not going anyplace. And so that collaboration and the reliability of that collaboration, I think, is one of the features that marks MiFi as a fairly unique tool. But happy to tag onto that, or would you like to say anything about it?
So this isn't always, it's tough to explain, but in my knowledge of FMC's Farmers Market Metrics program and ours, the easiest way to give different about data and what it means to have to collect scientific data. So again, it's difficult to explain exact differences, and it might not mean a lot to the average farmer's market, but when you go to communicate your findings to stakeholders that might know a little bit more about kind of, or have higher expectations for collecting accurate vendor data or visitor count data, that kind of thing, it's important to have that extra scientific standards. But I would also say we don't compromise the extra increased reliability for the market context and having markets being able to collect the data.
Right. We have a strong balance between usability and scientific reliability. So we have valid measures that are reliable over time and that help tell robust stories, as Dusty was indicating, but are usable.
Great. Thank you, guys. Another Zoom question from Claudia. How do you approach vendors for sales data? I'm not sure all of our vendors have that information. Okay, sounds good. Dusty, you want to weigh in on that?
We know it's completely unrealistic to expect them to give us their sales data on the same day that they were at the market. Nobody has that information that quickly. The other thing that we've run into is people who are sending staff members to the market. So we do have a couple vendors who don't participate in our sales data collection process. Unmute me. Thanks. Okay. So you can hear me, right? He keeps muting and unmuting me, so I just want to make sure. So then the other piece is that we're really clear with folks, especially when we first rolled out the program, there was a lot of hesitation about participating because there was concern that we were submitting this data to the tax holders or the Department of Revenue, and that we were going to be sending in their sales data and they were going to get lots of feedback from it was basically a big conspiracy thing. Like we're out to get you and we're trying to get you tax, like make sure you're sending in all your tax data. So being really clear with them and very obvious about the fact that we're not assigning their sales data to their particular vendor sales slip was vital. And the key for us to collect that data from some of our vendors who were particularly suspicious of giving us the data that we were requesting. And then the other piece is just with those folks that send staff members, occasionally we'll have staff members who know that we want the data. So they will know the data and they'll get approval from their staff person, or their head person, that if I know the data, is it okay if I give it to her? And they will stand there at the market and fill out the vendor sales slip for me, even though their supervisor may have forgotten or didn't happen to send it along. So usually the sales slips are kept in cash boxes so that people don't forget about them, and then they get them out. It's sort of it's become our thing now. It's like they look forward to me coming by, and we open the clipboard that we have, like a pocket in our clipboard, and they shuffle them all in, and we say hi and check in. And like I said, it's been a nice interpersonal development piece as well. We've got a lot more vendor buy-in to the program because we walk around and collect them. I know other folks go through and have people drop them off, or they request that data electronically, anonymously after the market. I don't know what their return rates are as compared to ours, but I know there's many ways. Like we said, the program works with markets from various settings, so they all work the way that they work best for that market. But the anonymity piece is really the key that helped make it help make it sell for us.
Great, thanks, Dusty. Do you have anything to add to that before? Yeah, I think Deborah has a question, so we'll have Alfonso go first.
Right. Dusty, are the majority of your vendors staffed by the actual owner, or do you know how that breaks down in terms of how many have staff members manning their booth?
I believe I have about maybe 5 of my 45 to 50 full season vendors who are sending staff folks. So, and even then, most of those 5 still are able to participate.
Sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alfonso had a little to add on to that.
I think one of the great things about our process is that we protect the processes protect folks' privacy. There's an appropriate level of engagement all the time, but like in any good relationship, revealing parts of yourself builds the relationship. As you build that relationship, then that relationship echoes through other relationships, and that strengthens the entire community. So one of the things that we have are we've developed why collect data. We've developed tools to help vendors understand that we're not out the market manager is not out to get them. The market manager is there to support them, and by participating in the process, by getting as high a participation as possible, then they develop a win-win situation. Markets we worked with included markets that required vendors to report their data, and other markets we worked with had nobody interested in it, but when they started collecting the data, it was like Dusty was saying, as vendors began to understand the value of their data, and see how important it was to the market in improving the prospects of the market, then there was a much more excitement and participation.
I'd also say that especially the markets and the vendors that were very hesitant to share their sales data, they kind of I was actually at a vendor meeting where I told them it's not about them. We don't care. We could care less about their individual vendor sales. It's about adding it up to the market and then explaining how we're going to use it. So once we kind of have, because they don't want it to be about them. So making it not about them and explaining how it's not about them is really the big key there.
Great. Do we have any other studio audience questions right off the bat? I was wondering how easily the program is scaled up. Like, what are your needs? And I mean, what's the team look like right now? I know it's you guys are doing a lot of the work, but and you already have the portal. But yeah, I'm just curious to know.
So the team evolves and changes over time. Originally, there was the Farmers Market Coalition and the University of Wisconsin. Then we introduced the University of Wisconsin. We sought graphic design support from a firm, and we sought software development support. We contracted for those things. They became part of the team. The software support is ongoing. Then as students have joined the program for various purposes, they find ways to advance their goals and the goals of markets through this work. Right now, Lauren and I, if you look at our webpage, we're the right? Oh yeah, we've got a staff economist, Phil Warsaw, who's a University of Wisconsin economics PhD. He's taking a job at Michigan State, but will remain the economist for us to help with regional economic impact, local economic impact work. And so we're excited about advancing that work this summer here in Wisconsin with 20-odd markets in Milwaukee County and Marathon County, as well as advancing that work with markets elsewhere. So our staff grows and changes according to the needs that we have. And then the needs markets give us to care about.
I would say the biggest staff requirement, ongoing one, is the relationship between us as the scholars and then also our web developer in terms of from a program management standpoint, because the research that we collected on paper, we have to embed all of that into a coding program. But there's also different theories of coding out there that then kind of have different effects in how our systems work online, and then also how markets interact with the online processes versus processes. So really having a very intimate and iterative relationship with our web developer has been vital, a major component of this project.
And as a matter of fact, a person can look at a YouTube channel of that process. To just echo what Lauren was saying, the web developer can really make the program work. And so since we came at this with the insights of markets and the insights of science, our software is very robust and enables markets to do all kinds of interesting things with their data. And that would only happen under the conditions where there was a tight relationship there and a clear attention to the needs of market managers as well as the needs of producing good, solid, robust data.
Great, thank you. I think we've got time for one more question, and we're going to toss it over to Deborah again.
Yes, Alfonso, could you elaborate on what you're doing in Milwaukee County?
Sure thing, Deborah. It's a good question. So, a local Madison organization, a statewide organization named REAP Food Group, received a USDA Farmers Market Promotion Program grant last year, and MiFi was a subcontractor on that grant. And the idea of that grant was to work with markets in 2 counties in Wisconsin, Milwaukee County and Marathon County, a relatively urban county and a relatively rural county, and to understand the importance of the markets, not just at the individual level of the market, but how it is that a group of markets made an economic contribution to the county. So that work is deploying MiFi in those markets to get a broad sense of the economic contribution those markets are making in those counties. I mean, just for fun, Lauren, do you want to add anything to that? Okay, yeah. So does that answer your question, Deborah? Thank you for it. Oops. Thank you.
Unmute. Do you know the names of the markets you're going to be working with in Milwaukee County?
I know a few of them. Near West Side Market, South Shore,
Sure.
maybe. Who else? Which Fox Point? So we don't actually have the final list from REAP yet. REAP is we're implementing the project on behalf of the REAP Food Group organization, and so we're waiting for a final list of markets from them.
Sure. And do you have a contact person at REAP that's working on that?
That's a good question. Yeah, why don't you email us, Deborah? That's
Okay,
easy.
I will.
Because the
It
REAP
used to
person
be me.
is changing.
Yeah, it used to be me.
You want to say, Hannah? Are you online?
So
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Krista Engelhardt at the Central Rivers Farm Shed, she's really leading the project right now because I just left in February.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's helping identify markets, especially because she's in that central region of the state, and she's working with Lee Presley, who I saw was on the call recently from UW Extension.
Sure, I know Lee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Lee would know the list from Milwaukee because we identified that. Mm-hmm.
That's great. I do a lot of work in Milwaukee, so that'd be good to know.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, guys. All right. I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you guys all for joining us. We hope that you can make it to our next episode, which is June 14th. And our host that event is going to be the Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems, also known as CIAS. Once again, we are going to be doing something different. Instead of our normal start time of 3:30, we're going to be starting at 5:30 in the Historical Society on Library Mall in Madison. And the event is actually going to be the keynote address of a larger 4-day conference. I believe this is the sort of promo we have for that. And the conference is called Agro-Eco Prospect, the challenge of integrating values, food, and farming. And CIS is one of the main organizers of that conference. So anything else? I think if you want to join our mailing list, Greg is going to paste that in the chat box, I believe, and it'll open up an email that you can send to us to join. Or you can follow us on Facebook, and that information will be there as well. We're always posting events for the next Food in Wisconsin Idea discussion. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. We're going to head over to the Dutch Mill Sports Bar for the sort of happy hour.
Thank you, Dusty. I don't know if you can see us or hear us, but thank you. I will see you this summer.